The School of the Bear. Little is known about it, yet one look at their custom armor reveals telling details of the Witchers who wear it. A hardy, quilted gambeson, heavy mail extending to the knees, plate armor spalders to protect the shoulders. A Witcher equipped in such gear would not leap from raking claws nor sidestep a beast's gnashing fangs. There is no need, for he can endure the blows and ensure a short distance from which he can exact his revenge. Nestled somewhere deep in the ML mountain range exists a keep, Harn Kaduk, home to the continent's fiercest warriors, Witchers, those belonging to the School of the Bear. Life is hard for a student of this path, the ever-present shadows of frostbite and hypothermia a constant companion, wolves and other creatures always there, lurking about, watching, waiting. Snow. The snow in the war against it. Timeless and eternal, the frost seeks only to consume, to devour the keep and those who dwell there. It falls on those Witchers in training to fight back, to remove the snow before it piles too high. Days and years go by, untold hours spent in a battle that cannot be won, never gaining ground, only ever forestalling the inevitable truth. Nature will triumph. A student of the school must come to accept that some forces cannot be stopped. Death waits at the end of a Witcher's path, wherever that may be, and in time, all will be forgotten. There is no honor found in knightly virtues or in the self-indulgent belief that Witchers should follow a code, something other schools have come to pride themselves on. Do the job you've been assigned, complete the task in whichever way you see fit, attack your foe with reckless abandon, with the wild ferocity of a grizzly in his prime, and when you complete the hunt, move on to the next. For a Bear School Witcher, honor is in the job itself, in continuing on, knowing all the while you will eventually meet your end. A student of the path must also learn to hold his ground, to stay at all times vigilant and watchful. In a way, each school mirrors its chosen beast. Unlike the wolves who form brotherly bonds and in time come to resemble something much like a pack, bears don't get along. The path of a Bear School Witcher is one of solitude, of isolation. Rivalry between students isn't just encouraged, it's expected. One who lets his guard down will pay the price. Yes, it's a rough existence for anyone unfortunate enough to end up here, secluded in the mountains, cut off from the outside world. Then again, the continent is an unforgiving place, and few are those born with the privilege of an easy life. Eventually the day will come. After years of training and fighting for survival, developing the aspect of a bear and the physical power of one too, a final test must be completed, the trial of the mountain. At the highest point of the highest peak of the ML Mountains is found a rare stone, a rune stone. To become a true member of the school and earn the right to a medallion, one must simply retrieve it. Easier said than done. The path to Mount Gorgon, Devil Mountain, it's long, treacherous, the way forward unmarked. The journey begins and ends in much the same way every other day begins and ends in this place, cold. He who attempts the trial will likely encounter wildlife, perhaps a lesser monster or two, but that's the easy part. Fighting is about doing, and doing is so very different from enduring. There's control in doing. The cold, though, it's just there, and there's nothing for it. Endure or don't. Many don't, or can't, and never make it back. As the Witcher climbs higher and the elevation changes, so too does the quality of the snow and the amount of it. Waist deep in fresh powder, every step becomes a test of will and of physical strength, too. Progress is slow, and there's still no telling which direction is the right one. Endure or don't. After making it near the end, the final bit of flat ground before the final ascent, one last test remains, a test of the mind. The evergreens give way to bare stone and rock, and the fog line appears. That's the test, the fog. Like swimming in murky water, the fog is absolute, even for mutated eyes. The Witcher must make it through blind. There are phantoms in the fog, wraiths, and they will try to break his mind. Whispering with the voices of distant memory, they will lead him to a ledge if they can, so he might fall to join their ranks. The Witcher must keep his wits about him. He must keep climbing, crawling when need be. He must make it through all of this, to the highest point of the highest peak, and he must return. Only then will he prove himself ready, worthy of the title, Witcher. The Witcher series, written by Andrzej Sapkowski, is a collection of books set in a place known as the Continent. It's a world plagued by monsters. Witchers hunt those monsters for money. Geralt, one of the main characters in the books, is a Witcher belonging to the School of the Wolf, that school being the only one we get any real detailed information about. The books do mention the cats, and at one point a Griffin Witcher medallion is shown, but little is said about those two. The Witcher games, however, expanded on the idea of there being different Witcher schools and introduced some pretty cool new factions, which allowed for many different unique playstyles. One of those factions in particular, the School of the Bear, became an instant fan favorite, with good reason too. Based on the information we have about this school, the Witchers from it seem very much like Viking warriors. From a video game perspective, they take on the role of a tank, wearing heavy armor and shielding themselves with the shield spell Gwent. Bear School Witchers are strong and won't run from a fight. The question I've been trying to answer is, how might we train to be like them? There are many ways to approach the topic, but I think to get at the heart of what Bear School Witchers are, it makes sense to look back on the early days of their lives, to those years spent training up in the mountains. This in mind, the first thing to note is the cold. A Bear School apprentice must either learn to endure the cold or die. That word endure will come up a lot today. I think it describes the School of the Bear better than any other. Living in an environment like that does something to a person. Constantly fighting the cold means there would likely be very little comfort, ever. A Bear School apprentice would probably forget what true comfort even is. There might be some brief respite by the fire at times, but the cold would act as a constant threat, and the Witcher in training would learn very early on to harden his mind to it. There's also the idea that Bear School Witchers don't form bonds with each other and often get into fights. In a place like that, where another apprentice might choose to attack you at any moment to show his superior strength, you would need to stay alert, constantly aware of your surroundings, and you would need to be independent. This ties in with the cold. A Bear School Witcher cannot stop pretty much ever. If he does, he'll pay the price in some way. Then there's the snow. It's said the snowfall in that part of the Amel mountain range rarely stops, and if it isn't removed from the courtyard, eventually the keep will be swallowed whole. This means hours every day spent doing some kind of shoveling, assuming they don't just use a spell to get rid of the snow. Hard manual labor for hours daily, that builds a different kind of strength, the strength to keep going, to not quit, once again, to endure. It would also transform the body. A Witcher in training would develop a muscular upper back, thick arms and forearms, a strong core trained to work from awkward and unpredictable off-center positions, strong calloused hands, and broad shoulders. There's the training itself too. School of the Bear Witchers don't shy away from attacks, they take them head on. To do this, they must learn to absorb incoming forces. Without this ability, the heavy armor they wear would be meaningless. On the topic of armor, the Witchers would also need extreme stamina. Hunting a monster in heavy armor would be pointless if the weight of it wears them out before the fight even begins. The armor must not act as a burden, even when worn for many hours at a time. There's also sword training to consider. All Witchers must be fast, but the School of the Bear favors heavy attacks, large, sweeping strikes meant to end things in a single blow. This would require both strength and precision, as well as power. I think this is all coming together to form a clear picture. To me, when I see it all laid out, what instantly comes to mind is the idea of strong and well-built masters of strength endurance, minds tempered by the cold and the constant threat of ambush, bodies hardened by long hours of strenuous labor, able to brace against incoming blows without slowing down, the strength to attack with great force and the endurance to do so all day if need be. A Witcher from the School of the Bear is like an unstoppable force, constant and absolute. How might we train to be like that? Well, I like the idea of never letting up, never slowing down, never becoming too comfortable. I think the training style should have an element of that to it. It should teach us to endure. It also needs to make us strong and should build muscle, shaping us into something resembling a lean, natural strongman competitor. Or as a segue into something that's a bit off topic but that I believe adds to the video in a meaningful way, a sort of Viking warrior from the past. School of the Bear Witchers are often associated with Vikings due to their preference for hunting in Skellige, a place home to a people who are basically Vikings. I think it's worth mentioning, most everything said in this video about Bear School Witchers could easily be applied to Vikings as well. The two are very similar in many ways, aside from the mutations and whatnot. On the topic of muscle, I'd like to talk about Vikings for a moment, because I believe they can provide us some insight into the type of muscular development we might aim to achieve when training to become a Witcher. Contrary to how they're typically portrayed in the media, average Vikings were much less like Half-Thor, though I'm sure there were exceptions, and I think Thor is awesome, and more like lean and muscular masters of strength, endurance, and power, able to strike down enemies in battle, yes, but also built to endure physically demanding lives, managing a farm being a good example of that. Some sources claim the average Norseman in the Viking Age was roughly 5 foot 7 inches tall and weighed somewhere around 170 pounds. Other sources claim closer to 5 foot 10, sometimes over 6 feet. Those who decided to go on raids were probably on the taller side. It doesn't really matter. What interests me about this is that ratio between height and weight. A lean but probably not shredded 170 at 5'7", that's well within reach for most people with proper training and time, naturally too, and it's a ratio that makes sense. Modern standards for what's considered muscular are completely out of sync with reality due to chemical enhancement. You don't need to be a giant or a mass monster to fill the role of warrior. In fact, I guarantee the vast majority of people at 5'7" would look, feel, and perform better at a lean 170 than they would with another 40 pounds of show muscle added to their frame. Looks are subjective, of course, and I'm not claiming extra muscle won't improve performance in some ways, especially when applied to things like trying to deadlift the most amount of weight. Nothing but respect for anyone who follows that path, by the way. Do what you want. But there's something I think a lot of people have a tendency to forget or to just not talk about. If the goal is becoming like a warrior, you can have too much muscle. In battle, being quick on your feet, agile, that's equally as important as strength, as is endurance. And to be effective, you would want to optimize the ratio between those things. The same is true for a witcher. It really doesn't matter how big a witcher is past a certain point. There's no deadlifting a troll, mutations or not. Monsters will always have a size and strength advantage. Added muscle at the expense of speed would be a mistake. Even accounting for the fact that bear school witchers don't shy away from attacks, they still need speed and agility so they can deliver their counterattack. Don't get it twisted, you can have a lot of muscle and be very fast at the same time. For the average person today, adding more muscle would likely make them faster, but at a certain point, you will pass a threshold. You'll enter that territory where every bit of extra mass you add to your body will only slow you down, and will cause you to wear out faster too. For a witcher, or a Viking, at a certain point, extra size means becoming less useful. Something like a lean 170 at 5'7", 175 at 5'9", 180 at 5'11", give or take 10 to 20 pounds based on body shape. The ratio just makes sense for being both strong and fast, while also having the endurance to keep going all day too. Like historically accurate Vikings, if we could see some real images of bear school witchers, I don't believe they would be giant mass monsters. I believe they would probably have a pretty similar frame to Geralt, who is muscular, but not unreasonably so. You could make the argument that bear school witchers might opt for a slightly higher body fat percentage to help with the cold and to stand strong when being hit by attacks. Not a bad idea, but still, being massive like a modern bodybuilder just wouldn't make sense. Just some thoughts I had on building muscle when the goal is becoming something more than an all-show and no-go kind of person. Anyway, back to the program. With everything in place, thinking about how we might train to become like bear school witchers, 3 things come to mind. Heavy, high-rep sandbag training, long-distance carries or rucking, and greasing the groove. Let's start with sandbags. Sandbags are the perfect choice for anyone looking to develop a rugged, muscular body equipped with the strength to ward off large opponents, exactly what we need. For the goal of becoming a bear school witcher, I believe focusing on high reps makes the most sense. While max strength, the ability to move the most amount of weight once or twice, can be useful, it doesn't really fit the character. The School of the Bear is more about strength endurance. It's about continuing on, relentlessly. For building that strength endurance, I like the idea of extended density training, long duration, timed AMRAP sets, as many reps as possible. I've been experimenting with this myself in anticipation of making this Bear School Witcher program, and I've settled on a setup that I think is very effective. It focuses on 4 of the core sandbag exercises, the row, the carry, the box squat, and the shoulder, and forces you to keep pushing far beyond where you'd probably like to push. Here's how it's set up. There will be 3 sandbag workouts every week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday if you'd like, and each day will be made up of only 2 sandbag exercises, followed by a bit of isolation work. Each day starts with a 10-minute AMRAP set of sandbag rows, and is followed by a 30-minute AMRAP set of one of the other 3 exercises. That might sound a bit ridiculous, doing an exercise for 30 minutes straight. It kinda is, and it will probably feel ridiculous when you first start, but you'll be amazed by how fast you can adapt to a setup like this. And anyway, what's 30 minutes compared with hours spent shoveling or climbing a mountain through waist-deep snow? Perspective makes all the difference. Monday's workout starts with sandbag rows, done for max reps in 10 minutes, and is followed by the sandbag to shoulder for max reps in 30 minutes. I can't stress this next part enough. Sandbag rows are possibly the greatest sandbag muscle building exercise there is. With time, they will change you. but they do put you in a very compromised position, completely bent over, chest near the ground, and when done incorrectly, they can mess you up. For this reason, you must focus your attention at all times on maintaining proper form during the set. Do your best to keep your lower back flat, use your legs to get the sandbag moving off the ground, and always keep a solid brace in your core. Something that's helped me a lot is thinking arch. After you've taken in your air and your hands are in position, think about arching your lower back, raising your hips high towards the ceiling, and keeping a proud chest. For most people, thinking arch in this completely bent over position will put the lower back into a neutral position. Perfect. Sandbag rows also put a lot of strain on the biceps and forearms, so you'll want to make sure you get a good pump before starting your set. Take a light band or two and rep out at least 1 to 200 fast curls per arm in each of the 3 positions: underhand, neutral, and overhand. This will go a long way towards keeping your muscles and tendons safe. You'll also want to make sure your hamstrings are completely warmed up and ready to go too. Doing at least 50 to 100 reps with a band good morning is a great way to do that. Once you're ready, all you have to do is set a timer for 10 minutes and do as many reps as you can before the time runs out. I've found starting with a set of higher reps, then doing mini sets of 2 to 3 reps at a time with short rest periods between sets works great for me, but there are many ways you could do it. Sets of 5 with longer rest times between each set, singles, it comes down to personal preference. When attempting the set, I recommend having a training log nearby to mark your reps. 5 minutes in and it gets tough to keep track in your head. At the end of the set, write down how many total reps you got, and every workout, try to get at least 1 extra rep. By the way, it's completely normal if you spend most of your time resting during the set when you first start. It will likely take a few weeks before you're able to pick up the pace. For the second exercise in Monday's workout, the sandbag to shoulder done for max reps in 30 minutes, I have 3 recommendations. 1. Place your sandbag on a platform of some kind between reps so you don't have to pick it up off the ground every time. This lets you focus on the lap to shoulder part of the exercise, lets you get way more reps, and dramatically reduces overall fatigue. My second recommendation, if you have the option, is to use an underfilled sandbag, something that will move on you as you try to lift it. This completely changes the stimulus compared to a tightly packed bag and mimics fighting a live opponent in a way tightly packed bags don't. And 3, I recommend using an explosive lifting style, at least for the initial lift from the lap to the chest. Catching a sandbag against the chest teaches you to absorb and internalize incoming attacks, something a bear school witcher would need. You don't need to follow these 3 recommendations if you don't want to. You can just do the basic sandbag to shoulder in whatever way you'd like. I just think they're the most specific to becoming a bear school witcher. Once you're ready, set a timer for 30 minutes, lift your sandbag to your shoulder as many times as you can, making sure to do an equal number of reps per shoulder, and every Monday, try to do more reps than you did last time. Finally, I'm a huge believer in training the lower back and abs directly, so after your 30-minute set, end the day with some light training for those areas. First, you'll want to do some kind of lightweight hip hinge exercise. I like the tried and true bodyweight hyperextension. Band good mornings are great too. Once you have your exercise, do 100 reps. It doesn't matter how many sets it takes you to get there. I like sets of 30, 25, 20, 15, and 10 myself, but it doesn't much matter. Just get to 100. After that, do 100 sit-ups or crunches, leg lifts or something similar for the abs, and end with 50 reps each for the obliques. Wednesday's sandbag workout is identical to Monday's, only you'll replace the sandbag to shoulder with sandbag carries. Start with your 10-minute set of rows, try to do more reps than you did on Monday, give yourself a couple minutes to rest, then set a timer for 30 minutes and carry your sandbag as far as you can in that time. If you have the option, like with the sandbag to shoulder, I recommend setting your sandbag on a platform between carries. You can track this however you'd like, but what's worked well for me is to do a lap of my basement, which is roughly 50 feet or so, though the exact distance doesn't really matter. Set the sandbag on the platform, make a tally mark on my training log, and repeat until the 30 minutes are up. After carries, end the day with direct work for the lower back and abs like you did on Monday. Friday's workout is again identical to the other 2, apart from the 30-minute set. Start with your 10 minutes of rows, aiming for that extra rep or 2, then perform a 30-minute set of box squats. Set the box height close to parallel if you can, so your thighs are parallel to the ground when seated on the box. Start the timer, sit on the box with the sandbag on your lap, and keep squatting until the time is up. If you can manage it, try to keep the sandbag on your lap for the full 30 minutes. If you need to take a break partway through, that's fine, but the goal should be eventually making it the full 30 minutes without ever letting go of the sandbag. After that, again do your lower back and ab exercises, and that's it. Before moving on to the rest of the program, I quickly want to talk about why I chose to focus on density training here rather than just using basic sets and reps. While this setup lets you get a lot of high quality work in and will increase strength and size a great deal, it also strengthens the mind. It's not easy forcing yourself to keep doing reps for a full half an hour. 5 minutes in and you'll want to quit. 20 minutes and you'll begin to question your life choices, but over time, with every rep you make yourself do, your mind will become stronger, like the Witcher in training who is never allowed comfort, who must always be alert, who must endure, so too will you learn to endure. The training might be hard, but it will pay off big time later on down the road, on those days when you're off hunting monsters way out there in the fields of Ard-Skellig or wherever you find yourself. I won't lie to you, if you're not used to this style of training, it will likely come as a shock, and initially, most of your time will be spent resting between reps, but stick with it and it will change you. Lastly, before moving on, I want to mention that visualization can be an incredibly useful tool. During those 30-minute sets, and during the 10-minute ones too, I'd highly recommend keeping the image of a Witcher in mind. Imagine the task you're doing is preparing you for those days out there in the wilds, in the mountains, tracking a griffin, or trying to make it all night in a castle fighting off a Striga. It will help. Now let's move on to the rest of the program, and here's where things get interesting. While the sandbag work is the base, it's fixed and should stay the same every week, the other parts of the program can be more fluid and can change depending on how much time you have available. Starting with long distance carries or rucking, essentially just weighted walking, adding weight to the body and moving around, I think this is a vital part of what makes a Bear School Witcher who he is. Traveling many miles with heavy armor, tracking a monster through the woods, without it, I think the program would be missing something. How you do this weighted walking is up to you. Something I like is heading to a trail and looking for a small stone, then carrying it in different positions for a couple miles. I'll try to keep hold of the stone for the entire walk if I can, starting with it held against my chest, moving it to each shoulder when I start to wear out, then back to my chest again and continuing the rotation. You could put on a weight vest or a backpack filled with something like 10 to 30 pounds depending on your strength level. With time, you can go much heavier than that too. I know most don't, but if you have some actual armor, that would be pretty cool. Just add some weight to your body and go for a walk. As for how much and how often, if you can, at the bare minimum, I recommend going for at least an hour once a week. That's enough to see results. And if you have the time for it, 1 to 2 hours 3 times a week is a good upper limit for this program. Do this on whichever day or days of the week you'd like. In addition to strengthening basically the entire body, weighted walking will develop that mental grit, that unbreakable will to keep going, the mind of a Bear School Witcher. If possible, I recommend doing this part of the program somewhere out in nature and thinking of it as an adventure rather than as just more exercise. Have fun with it. It's like going on a quest or something, tracking a monster. With the right frame of mind, even something as mundane as walking can become a great experience. If you can't make it out into nature, listening to the Witcher audiobook or something similar while on a treadmill works too. The final part of the program is greasing the groove. If you haven't heard of the training style, greasing the groove simply refers to taking an exercise and practicing it all day. A common example of this is doing a few pull-ups every time you pass your pull-up bar, say a couple reps every hour. This part of the program is entirely open-ended, and honestly, you could do anything you'd like here. The main idea is to never stop moving for long. Remember, at the heart of a Bear School Witcher is the strength to endure, to keep going even when it would be so much easier not to. A Witcher doesn't have the luxury of sitting around all day, and our training should reflect that. So, how does greasing the groove work in the program? Well, you can do any exercise you'd like. I'll give some examples soon, but at the base level, just do a quick set of something at least once every hour or so throughout the day. You don't need to be strict about it, don't set a timer or anything like that, just get a set in whenever you think about it. I recommend doing this a minimum of 3 days every week and a maximum of 6 days per week. The grease and the groove stuff can be done on the same days as your other workouts or on your off days. That's up to you. I will say though, you'll want to organize this so you get at least 1 full day every week off from everything, Saturday or Sunday perhaps. Witchers might have superhuman recovery, but we unfortunately do not, and giving your body that day to rest makes a big difference. About specific exercises, again, this part is up to you, but to give some examples, there's no dedicated pressing work in the program, so push-ups might be a good choice. Pike push-ups or dips are too. You could rotate between all 3 if you'd like. Pull-ups or inverted rows work well, squats, lunges, any kind of bodyweight training is great for a greasing the groove style setup. There are other things you can do too. If you like swinging a steel mace or club, you could focus on that. Kettlebells work. You might want to get some direct neck training in, or just do a bunch of curls and extensions all day. If you really want to double down, you could also just skip basic exercises altogether and train with a sword or a stick, practicing cool moves like a witcher might do. Anything goes. Remember, this is more about movement than it is specific exercises. Just make yourself keep doing things throughout the day and you'll be good. All of that said, there is one rule you should follow. For this program, never take your greasing the groove sets to true failure. Doing so would generate too much fatigue. Imagine, even on the low end, if you grease the groove 3 days every week and complete roughly 12 to 14 sets each day, that's at least 36 sets every week. Taking 36 sets to failure, in addition to the sandbag work and the weighted walking, is a recipe for burnout. Always leave some reps in the tank. If you can do a set of 20 push-ups, don't go above 10 to 15 per set. That's the only rule. Aside from that, you can do whatever you'd like. Whatever you choose to do, when it's time for that quick bit of training, take a moment and remind yourself why you're doing it. To be like a witcher, because witchers are awesome, and training to be like one makes every day an adventure, and that makes life fun. And that's how I would train to be like a witcher from the School of the Bear. If you want to know more about sandbags, I've written 2 books on them. They're both on Amazon. Links in the description if you're interested. And if you enjoyed this, I think you'll like the first Witcher video I made a while back. There should be a link to it on screen now. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.